everybody. Welcome back to Soul Butter.
Hi.
Okay, so this week we're going to talk about the season of graduation and
Yay, and
celebration.
celebration.
I mean, this is literally where a lot of us are that are actually celebrating kids who are either in a graduation period in this moment, if we're college level, or we're moving towards graduation at grade school level.
Right.
And just, I mean, everything's popped. We are fully green. The weather is warm. There's something that comes alive in all of us during this time, but it's certainly, you know, as Amy is saying, it's time to party. You know, It is the celebration time of this milestone that has been reached, that there's been all of this work and all of this learning and you know, all kinds of experiences that have brought us to a real milestone mark in our growth. And so even though it is a literal graduation and celebration season, there is also a spiritual season of this going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about the dynamics of this today and tell you, don't forget to celebrate and to sit and take inventory of all the successes and experiences that have brought you and yours to this moment. But also, what should we be doing inside of the development of this identity as a graduate, and how we should be tending to our garden that we started to talk about last week. So Amy, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I wanted to say that came across when you were talking is you said it's been a time of learning. And even if we're not in actual school and graduating, I really feel like something in the spirit broke over us in the past, 10 days. We're in May right now. And I just feel like there was a really powerful struggle season, like we always say, like right before the birth, the labor before the birth. And it's like we birthed this thing and we're still in pain. And then all of a sudden, like everything just kind of relaxed, everything's in bloom. We're kind of feeling the harvest of all of the work that we've done. And that is definitely something that God has had to sit me down and help me to understand. I had a coach once speak over me and say, do you know how to celebrate? Do you know how to stop and celebrate yourself? And I was like, I kind of was taken back by him. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, you ever celebrate? How do you celebrate your friends? And through the coaching, he said, how would you celebrate if your friend came? I was like, I probably would just start screaming. And like, if someone did something great and they finally got something that they've been working towards, it would be like, oh my God, and give them a hug. He goes, I want you to stop and give yourself a hug, no matter how hard that seems. Like, I don't care if you just pat yourself on the back or just give yourself a hug, like stop and celebrate, because you deserve it. And so many of us are, so performance based. We're moving through life and it's like, check. I'm like that. I'm like, okay, check, next thing. And just to be careful that we stop and celebrate the things that, how far we've come. And even in a spiritual sense, like, man, I know people that are moving in the same spiritual season as we are in these spiritual waves, that it's been really tough. It's been a really, really tough, even year. Getting to this point, and it feels like, we can breathe again, and we really do need to stop and say, look how far we've come. And before we go on too quick, just stop and say, look how far I've come. Thank you, God. Give thanks.
Well, I think about that literal education process, and before you hit any level of graduation, like I think it back to when we were in college, and like right before we got to that graduation period, there was some sort of thesis paper that had to be written. Right. It was like that final declaration of your major to like get through, right. and write your 35 or your 50-page paper, whatever that was. And, thinking about that, and how many times, like before you left California, were you saying, like, I'm in my freaking, forget master's degree, like I'm in my, my like PhD program right now, like my work study, like that kind of thing. And
real life school.
Yeah, real life school. And this idea of having to kind of work through the experience, the apprenticeship, right? Where like the work never really stopped. It was like we got to experience this feeling of leveling up, but there was no pause to
Right.
stop and say, look at how much I've accomplished, look at how far I've come. And I do think that this is a symptom of high performance individuals, right? Like you're right. There's the checkbox, that list of things of like, okay, I got that done. What's next? And, to be able to pause, if you want to call it that, but it's really like last week we were talking about, if you're going to get ready to create a new garden, the first thing that you have to do is take inventory of all the things that have to come out, right? So we are in this season of celebration and graduation, but we're also in a season of taking inventory, right? So it is this very fine balance of allowing ourselves to be fully immersed in the moment of success and to feel that gratitude with every cell of our being, but not, like that thing we were just reading, it says, don't rest too long on the laurels of success, right? Because there's all of these new opportunities that are coming forward in this season of this burst and bountiful growth. There are all of these new opportunities that are being magnetized in based on all the work and focused intention that you just had over like the last year, 2 years, 3 years, like however long you've been preparing for this graduation. All of those things that you were doing magnetized in, it was becoming more and more focused, and you were telling God, this is the direction that I want to go. These are the intentions that I'm setting. And so now is the time when that work has broke, like you said, that spirit of intense toiling has broken, and that we have this window of time to really soak in that gratitude in order to actually fuel the best opportunities to come into our lives.
Right. And I'm thinking of graduating school, college, high school. I'm more thinking of like a college graduation where it's like, okay, I've graduated, celebrations are happening, families around, and then everything, the celebrations ends. Now what? Now the real deal. Now you go to work. Now you get to work. You get to take everything that you've learned and start working. At that point, there could be a moment of, I don't know what we would call it, but a dip in that every time we celebrate, there's a little dip that you got to be ready for where like reality kicks in and you're like, oh my God, now what am I going to do? Like I actually have to, go to work and do the thing. All these dreams, like, here we go. We'll start this podcast. We got this coaching business. We're going to announce this. And there's a point where like you announce, you launch, and then you got to do the work. And so at that point, that's where that's the inventory that you're talking about. It's a time now in this in-between time to start taking inventory and really settling down and getting with God and knowing what, and it could be as simple as what to take out of your life, what to take out of your garden, because some things you're not going to be able to do anymore. There's going to be some weeds in there, which weeds to me are people, there, you might need a clearing, you might need to cut down. There might be some things that you have to take away in order for that garden to keep blossoming and blooming, because anyone who's seen, even if you're not a gardener, I mean, you see lawns and you see houses of people that don't take care of even their lawns and their landscape, what that looks like. If you want a beautiful landscape in your life, you have to tend to it. So here you do, we've done all the planning, what you were talking about, do all the planning, all the preparing, whether you're bearing bulbs, what was I trying to say? Planting, I guess, right? Yeah. Planting, whether you're planting bulbs in the ground and waiting for them to come up, or all of your perennials to come up again, you still have work to do. Like everything is blooming and it's like, okay, now go do the work. You've been waiting on it to bloom. Now you got to go out do that. You know that because you've been tending to your backyard. What's popped up in your backyard now that you got to go tend to? It's beautiful back there. There's all of this foliage and greens. You better cut the grass. But what else has come up in the midst if you're not paying attention? That whole line of poison ivy that you have. Right?
And the bamboo is growing like crazy.
See? So it's like, what do you do? Pay attention to what's happening. It's a time to pay attention for that and take that inventory.
I think about the idea of, like you were talking about, it's that period of time where I've done the thing
Mhm.
and now I'm a graduate.
Right.
And I'm a graduate of what? Right. Well, whatever core values you've been studying. Right.
Right.
So, like, if you look at it from the perspective of a kid, it's like, I just graduated with my master's in business and now I'm
Right.
going to go get this job in business. And so our identities are so consumed by what we do versus who we are,
Mm.
that this place where you are now taking on this new identity that hasn't really taken shape yet, right? It's just a vision, which is very powerful. Having a
Yes.
vision is a foundation that you have to have. Like, it's not an optional thing. If you
Exactly.
want long-term success, there needs to be some sort of significant vision that you're moving toward.
Exactly.
But there is, if the freshness and the newness and the excitement of this identity that you get to step into to fulfill whatever this is, if we don't take the time to put it all out in front of us and really take inventory of it, then yes, the overwhelm can come seep in immediately, right? And then instead of getting to work and one step, slow and steady at a time, of cutting down the vines, getting somebody to come in and clear out the poison ivy, making sure that all the bamboo gets cut out and dug up, right? It's like, strategically, one thing at a time, we can go from the celebratory dopamine hit directly into the dopamine hit of procrastination and avoidance, which
Yes.
then ends up leading to overwhelm, which then leads to more avoidance and more procrastination. And
Mm.
before you know it, you have a backyard that you can't even sit in, or a garden that you can't even see all of the flowers that you've planted and the harvest that you're trying to bring forth, because now it's because you turned your back on it, because you couldn't just pick one thing to focus on. Now it's been swallowed up by the things that are opportunists, right? Those things that are out there that are looking to take advantage, that are looking to overgrow you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think going back to what you said about identity is so good, like making sure that these moments of celebration are temporary. Like I kept hearing, like there's a season for everything and you should celebrate, but that season's going to be over, and that next season is a time for, I think we were talking about earlier, unless you are really secure in your identity and where you're going in life, these labels and these things will take over you. Maybe the beauty of your garden. I mean, some people obsess about their house. That's all they do every weekend is make their house look pretty, make their house look pretty, and get what you want from that. But like sometimes people are just about the things and the superficial things. But we're talking about something way deeper here. Like, for us, let's just use us doing something like trying to launch a business, trying to launch a dual coaching, trying to launch retreats, like that can become part of our identity. And it is part so much that we are missing the undercurrent of what we need to be doing within ourselves. And sometimes the identity it becomes more earthly, I want to say, than who we are inside. And I think doing this work and sometimes graduating is like, whew, I'm done that. Like I graduated, me and God have been together and I've graduated and now I'm on my way. And he's like, oh no, like now you just started a new cycle. So keep your eyes open, because this is the beautiful thing about identity. Identity to me is partially the stripping and then partially the replacing with the truth. So I have to strip off all the things, again, back to the garden, when we're talking about this garden, it's like taking out those things I said could be other people, other things that we have in our lives, what we're feeding ourselves with, not just in food, but it's also what are you adding back in? So your identity is trying to get you closer to what I feel identity is, get you closer to who God made you to begin with. So the world takes over, and your focus goes on, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get this degree, I'm going to get this certification, I'm going to get this new job, I'm going to become a mom, I'm going to become married, whatever these things are, that becomes a part of your identity. on the earth. But what God wants to do is give you your identity underneath all of that. Like it's like the core and the center of who you really are and who he's trying to get you to be while you're here enjoying this earth and celebrating. But he wants you to constantly keep an eye up. Well, not one eye, but that'd be weird. Anyway, keep your eyes up while you're enjoying yourself. So we're talking about the shedding again and building yourself back up into what your original design was supposed to be.
So, one of the things that Amy and I were chatting about before we got on was these cycles of growth that we go through that are literally just part of our life contract, and we will cycle through these steps over and over again as we grow through these different cycles of our life. But one of the most important steps is the step of creating that foundation, the foundation that you're going to be able to stand on. And you were talking about the storms of life, that foundation that is going to be unshakable, right? And where you can plant your roots in this foundation that you built inside of this core identity of God, who God wanted you to be, not who the world made you to be.
Right.
And that foundation, once created, once identified, and then you've poured the concrete into it, that's what's going to carry you through the next storm that's coming. And there is this feeling of being in that foundational spiritual season right now, where God wants us to be happy and be joyful and to celebrate. But he also wants you to say, well, what exactly are you celebrating? Right? Let's just step back for a second. What did you learn through this process? What were the core values that started to pop up for you, that were true for you inside of your soul, like on that soul level, that heart level? What were those truths, those core beliefs that have been shaking you all this time to break apart? It was like the sledgehammer that God handed you as you were going through all of these challenges, and like, start breaking that up and look at what's holding it together and fix it and figure out what those core values are in your life that I love. There's it's been going around for a couple of years now. One of those terms that pops up on memes all the time, the unfuckwithable.
Yeah.
And this idea, like the energy around that of no matter what storm comes, no matter what people blow through my life, no matter what challenges I'm going to face, I'm standing here steady and secure. And it's because of the fact that I finally took the time to figure out who I was in this world. And not because someone told me I was that person, that I've grown into a place now where I don't have my parents seeding in values or beliefs or telling me that I have to show up and hug and kiss grandma, or that I've got to be polite in church, and that, I'm not allowed to wear jeans to this event, and I'm not allowed to, like, inside of those things that your parents taught you, you will find some values that you still have with you today that are not, you're not going to compromise those things. They're deal breakers, right? But then you're going to start discovering that there's a bunch of things that have been falling apart over the course of the last year, 2 years, 3 years, because of the fact that they're not yours. They're not your beliefs. They were constructs that got set up for you as a child, or generationally, or culturally, or, socially, where you grew up or in your neighborhood. And suddenly none of those things fit with where you are in your life now. And we've been shown all of those things over the course of the last few years, and over the course of just the last 6 months. It was like the final blow of dynamite to get rid of whatever was left of that old foundation. And I feel like we just poured the new concrete.
Yeah, it's so true. And I was brought to a scripture while you were talking that God gave me while I was in the destruction pummel. I call it the pummeling. Like I described it spiritually as when I decided to, and I remember there was a moment, and biblically they say that God is the great potter, the potter's house and the potter's wheel, and he is the great, molder. He give him yourself, right? So I remember when I literally went into what Jenny and I call identity crisis, where I was like, who am I and what am I doing? I am not, it's just a tug in your soul that you just feel like you're not aligned and there's a pulling, and you finally, like you said, what those things are you need to change in your life. And sometimes there's complete destruction when that happens. And I just remember there was a moment in my life where I said, okay, God, like whatever this is, the potter's wheel, I'm putting myself on it. And I felt like I was this misshaped, cracked, holy, vase. And he just came with the hammer. And it really felt like that. It really felt like he came with a hammer and it hurt. And I was like, why, God? But like and then there was the chunks left, and he'd walk over and it's like, I'm sitting there in pain, and he'd come over to one little chunk, like, boom. And that one would be destroyed. And each time it was something else. These false values that were given to me through whatever trauma, whatever I've identified that's important to me in my life, that or was important to me, that now do not align with who I would say when you're going through that process, all I can tell you is it's a feeling that you have that just feels misaligned. Like you have to go to the chiropractor. You need God's chiropractor just to, get you back into shape, because you're just misaligned, and you start to see more and more. And I think of the words like holy sanctification. And now I know that's super churchy, but like when you start to learn what these words really mean, and you're being sanctified and you're being more like God, again, scary stuff, but it's not. It's like what it really means is just become holy. Like, are we ever holy on this earth? No, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to give myself, I'm going to try to give those things to God every time that I feel the pulling and misalignment. And sometimes I need to go to like Jenny or a coach, or go to someone going, I'm misaligned right now. I am off and I'm feeling funked up. Like I'm not right. I'm not functioning right. So these are the warning signs. And once I went on that journey, I started to feel God come in with the, we say like the salve or the honey, the butter, he comes in and he starts to add all of his delicious divine fat and all that stuff that we talk about back in, and create this newness that he starts to form us again in his image, like truly what we were here to be. And I don't know, when you come across people who are really aligned, right? You can feel it on that. You can feel that, like you said, you can feel that like calm, slow, steady, like nothing's going to rock them. You can say whatever you want. You're not going to get them. You're not going to get me angry. And, that's the people that I was saying today are like the Zen people, where you're just like, wow, like I was telling Jenny today, like, think of all the people that we really look up to spiritually, whoever that may be for you. There's one thing across the board that we can say about all of them. Like mine is like a Maya Angelou, like just this steady rock that you can tell they've been refined over and over and over to where their feet are dug into the ground. And the scripture that came up for me while you were talking is not one that he gave me while I was going through the mess. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. So this is a tree planted by the rivers of water. So this is what we call evergreen. So once you go through this whole process, your roots are so deep, and you're by the living water, that you are just, like you said, that foundation, whatever analogies we want to give, like that solid rock foundation, when these storms come. And so we celebrated, right? So here you are, you and I are birthing this new pretty baby, and we're excited, and we're doing all the things, and we're doing the work. Well, we know the storms are going to come with this, right? But like, if we've done all the work and planted ourselves deep by the water, the living water, which to me is God, and really have that authentic core, like of ourselves, like that's what God wants us to take inventory of right now. Like, are there things that are misaligned so I can get you in alignment with me so you can be solid as a rock, because you're getting ready to go into a new cycle, and you're going to, and each cycle gets, I won't say harder, but like you said, it's a level up. Like there's a little more on the next cycle, and you think it's fun and good things are happening, but guess what? The storms are coming again. Like, are you planted?
I want to go back to what you were talking about with holy, the word holy,
Okay.
because I think that the definition that you and I have of holy is probably different than what people think. I mean, before you and I kind of developed our own definition of what holy means, it's intimidating to hear
Yes.
that word, because to me it sounds like self-sacrifice to a place of not even being allowed to have an identity, right?
Right.
So,
Mhm.
and that's terrifying. It's like identity is so incredibly important to us that we will try to attach our identity to everything that's in our environment.
Exactly.
Desperately trying to anchor ourselves into the world. And, this is where our culture is kind of just gone off the deep end, because we've become so consumed by identity from a public facing
Right. Like
perspective.
a branding almost,
Right.
like
Like
not
we
just a
talked about
branding
that
in
too last week,
business.
the branding.
Yeah. I was gonna say, not just like a branding in business, but a branding of what my house looks like, what kind of car I drive, what are we talking about? What do you do for a living? How much money are you making? Where are you going on vacation? Like the branding of the self.
Exactly. And the value inside of trying to push into that competition stream of whatever it is that you're attempting to attach identity to, because you've decided that that has value, right?
Mhm.
And those are the things that, and we talk about manifestation, and Amy talked about this last week when she was like, you can manifest anything you want. God created a universe that literally gives us whatever it is that we decide we want. You just need to know how to magnetize it in, right? So you can manipulate the laws of the universe and you can bring in whatever you want.
Right.
But none of that is going to seed your garden. None of that is going to fertilize for next year's perennials. None of that is going to last. It's going to be a pop of color that then gets eaten by the deer and eaten by the rabbits because you didn't plant your garden properly.
Right. Exactly. And I feel like some of that, and Amy's always gonna go, and I definitely just refer to myself in third person, which I never do, but whatever. I'm always gonna bring it back to, there is a dark side to this world. And I don't care who you are, you can't deny there's a dark side to this world. And so when you do start manifesting in things that are not aligned in the will of God, because I think that's the difference to me, as simple as I can put it. If something's in the will of God for my life, for me to manifest it, I have to pray, and I have to know, I have to see the vision. I want to write it down, make it plain, and do the work to get to it. That's manifesting in the will of God. If I want to have 6 figures by the end of this month and drive this kind of car and manifest this type of husband, like I can do all that, but it's not in the will of God, then there is a dark side that's going to use that against you. Ultimately, God uses it all for good, and we know that, but like you're just going down the harder path. Like if you just, which sometimes it doesn't feel like it, right? Because when you're on God's path, sometimes you're like, oh no, this is a little harder, a little harder.
I just took the sledgehammer like 4 times in a row. I'm not real sure.
Exactly. Like, really, Amy? Because all these people are over there getting their stuff, getting. And it's really hard as humans. Like, I think probably since the beginning of time that that has to have been in us, even though the stuff wasn't the same. Like whether it was in our stature, maybe for men, it was, still like men that are bigger, whatever, that envy. That's what it comes from. It's that envy to compete, like you said, competition. So to really evaluate, where are your values? Why do you want these things? Why are you trying to manifest these things? And when you sit back down with God and you start taking inventory, you're going to feel where you're like back to being misaligned. You're going to feel where you're misaligned.
So with that, let's talk about holy, because I think now the way that my brain interprets it is with the WH on the front of it.
Yep, me too. Yeah, the Jenny and I have a program that's the holy body, Holy Spirit, holy mind, but holy healed is truly what holy means to us now, is the whole self, the you that God designed you to be, being authentic, is being the holy. When I talked about sanctification and the righteousness, it's like, it's such a struggle for people who try to walk with God, because it's like, he gives you this grace. He gives you space to become. There's no condemnation. There's no, you're not doing it right. You're not perfect enough. He just asks that we continually get better and keep our eyes and our ears attuned to him. And what is he telling us to work on? And a lot of times I've seen it's what do you have to get out of the way to make space for me, right? So if you are wholly healed with the W, that means there's nothing in you that's keeping you from him. That's what that means to me. And nothing I use, obviously we're human, but I'm talking the big stuff.
Right. And even though there is a piece of us that, you can call it a generational curse, you can call it whatever you want, as far as the, some of the damage that's been done in the, the misaligned power structures of, I'm just going to use the word church in general, like the history of the church and what holy looks like inside of that, versus this wholeness, this idea of being whole, and God as the inherent goodness that we are all searching for in our lives. I mean, I come from the community of, the more spiritualism, right? Which isn't based on church. It's based on the connection of everything in the world under God, and the magic in all of that, and the use of all of that in our lives to try to fulfill ourselves. It's the same journey. It's the same search. It's the search to become whole. It's the search to be one with God, right? It's the same goal, the same core value that everyone is trying to align with, is to become whole. So holy from the perspective of become whole. And what's the benefit of becoming whole? It's like those spiritual mentors that you were just talking about. I mean, we were laughing about this because of the fact that, we are the twins. And more than anybody knows, I even think some of our closest friends don't realize, like, we call it a marriage, Amy was just talking about today. It's like being married to your best friend, who is also your twin and is a mirror to you all the time. This mirror image of characteristics, of personality, of background, of beliefs, of opinions, of wisdom. All of these things. And this includes all of our shortcomings, all of our wounds, all of our growth patterns. And, so when she was a kid, they called her Ram Jam, right? And when I was a kid, my parents called me Rammy. And I am in the double Aries though. So I am a Ram, like legitimate Ram, but like this idea of just kind of like, like through life,
you know if you are, because you have bruises on your body and you don't know where they come from. You know that you're a Ram Jam, Rammy person.
That's right. And this is a symptom of misalignment. Okay. It is by power and might that I move forward in my life, and I will get injured around every corner. I know when I am in a place of misalignment and I am Rammy, when every doorway I walk through, the pocket of my sweater gets stuck on the handle of the door.
The same door you've walked through 100 times, that your shoulder hits it. You ever do one of those? Boom. You're like,
my hip hits the corner of the countertop as I'm walking through the kitchen. I have a small kitchen. There is plenty of room for a girth of hips that is 4 times my body size. Yet I will hit the corner with my hip bone every freaking time when I walk through the kitchen.
Why? Because we're doing it, like you said, our own will and might. We got too many things going on. There's no space for anything else. And we got stuff to do, get out of the way. I don't even care if I rip skin off of my body. I'm going to keep going. Like, you're like, I'm bleeding. Is it bad? Do I need a Band-Aid? Probably not. I'll be walking around holding it for
Where
like,
did
I'll be
that come
holding
from? Did I just do that? It looks fresh. How did I just do that?
What about, has anyone ever asked you, you're bleeding? What? You're bleeding. I am. How did that happen?
And so this applies to, like, think about
Yes.
being in that state of total misalignment, and you try to go out and weed your garden in that energy. You're going to be ripping daffodils out. You're going to be ripping out your perennials that have been in there for like 10 years that you work so hard.
Or just think of like mowing the lawn. And if you ram jam mow the lawn, you're about to run over everything.
Yeah.
You're not even checking your kids' toys, the plant that someone bought. Like, you just
took out the neighbor with the rock that you just ran over. Yeah. So, this idea of slow and steady is so unappealing to me, because I want to, like, like that ram in me. I want to get it done, and I want to get it done quick. And, like, I don't want to waste any more time.
Right.
But that's not how God's plan works. And to be able to truly tune in to who you actually are is one of my favorite scriptures. And one of the first ones that Amy introduced me to is be still and know. And that idea of the stillness, the calmness, the steadiness, the breath, the connection with the heart, slowing the heart rate down. Like, this idea of stillness has taught me to be an entirely new version of myself. It's not that the rammy part of me doesn't come out, because it does. I have 2 small children. My days are crammed. I don't know how I'm going to get it all in. And it feels like some days the only way I can is if I'm ramming my way through the day. We're going to have times where that happens. But the alignment can happen at any point in your day. And being able to take some time for reflection. And we've been talking about, and we may have even mentioned this last week in this conversation, but fasting has been coming up a lot, this idea of fasting. And what's really interesting is that, Amy's been doing her 40-day soul fast for really more than for like 4 months instead of like 40 days.
Exactly.
But I've been doing it along for the ride with her as she's been doing this. And yes, I mean, it was like, take away your leisurely morning of scrolling on your phone or whatever that looked like, to sit with God instead. Right. And God's like, you're going to sit with me for the first hour of your day. That's what your soul fast is going to look like. But this idea that fasting isn't necessarily just cleaning things out, that fasting is adding back in. And you started to talk about that with the garden.
Yeah, exactly. So with the soul fast, like Jenny was talking about, I was praying a lot and I just kept hearing the word fast. And I didn't really know what that meant. I was like, okay, I know food fast, right? So what does that mean for me? And I'm like so aligned with God right now. I'm so like desperate, and I'm in a very, very unique space in my life, where I kind of have to be, I'm just desperate for him at all moments to see which way I'm moving. And I hope I stay this way forever, but he told me fast. So when I started thinking about it, I really didn't feel like it was food. And there was a piece of me was like, all right, this is my human side. Just don't want to like not eat. Is that what this is? But I didn't. I kept meditating and praying about it. And I really thought it wasn't food. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because when Jenny and I talk about fast, it's not always food. It's usually something that's keeping you away from God, so he can bring in, and it might not be a prayer meditation time. That might not be what it could be, something completely different than that, but because he wants to fill it with something different. Another fast that I had was on men. I mean, just to be honest, like that was a big fast. And I kept saying, oh, I'm not fasting. God was like, yeah, you are. You're fasting on men. You're not dating. You're not doing anything. You're sitting with me. So a fast can be anything. And it's basically like, so you are removing what I call sometimes idols, these idols that are anything that are between you and God is an idol, whether you like it or not. It could be your need to succeed, to get degrees, to get money, to whatever. Sometimes it's even in practice. Like it could be, even if you are a yoga teacher, it could be this need to succeed with becoming this big yoga teacher, like where you're forgetting about God. So if you pray about what God wants you to fast in this season, which I do think it is, I think we always should be fasting something, but that is heavy on us right now. So what happened with me was, like Jenny said, I was waking up really early. I was on West Coast and just scrolling, and I loved it because I didn't get on my phone all day. So I wasn't on my phone all day till about nighttime, and I'd scroll a little bit, but not really because I was tired. And I wake up early. I'm talking like 4:15, 5 in the morning, and I'd start scrolling before I knew it. It was 6 o'clock, and I was getting up for my walk. And so when God told me get up one morning, and he led me to this book that I had that was actually, I didn't know it, called the 40-Day Soul Fast. And I was like, okay, God. And it's so funny because I thought it was going to be 40 days. And here it is. It's so deep and so juicy and so, like, I call it like the meat, like chewing on the meat, like the word of God is like, it's the really thick, you got to chew it a lot. Every day I'm studying this one page for days on end. So what happened was I replaced my morning times with him. And it's just so beautiful because, we always talk about ourselves, because I think that doing the work on yourselves ultimately is so, what many of us say, not just me, is so your cup can overfill, right? Like, isn't that the whole point? Because if you're so ram jammy in your life, you forget that you're here for and why you're doing it. So God asked me to give up my mornings to do the soul fast, to become more of the whole soul fast is about becoming more of your authentic self, which is your and my passion. Mm-hmm. And so God was like, see, Amy, just if you pay attention, I'm going to give you the answers, but you got to spend time with me. And now that I'm doing it, it's like, what do I want to do with that? Like, this isn't all about us. The work isn't all about us. The whole point of becoming authentic, the whole point of being holy is to do the work, and not just your work. You do the work. So you do your work so you can then become true and authentic and stand in your true identity. So then you don't have to think about this all the time, and you can go out and serve and do the work that God has put you here for. Because what happens when you do the work for God? Every time that you've ever served, I don't care if it's even helping a friend out, that's serving. Like, whether it's to say something nice to somebody on the street, you look good today, that's serving. When you are overflowing because you are standing in your whole, authentic self, you're able to pour. Like, that's the whole point of everything we talk about. That is the goal.
It's so fun how all of this wraps into the same story and the same goal. Of creating a foundation that is a core identity inside of the original blueprint of who God wanted you to be. And the stripping away of the weeds, those things that were tempted to come into this delicious space that you had created. And it's sneaky how it happens. And before you know it, you're inundated with this stuff. And it's so overwhelming that it's just easier to turn your back on it and walk away. And the symptoms of that are depression,
fatigue,
anxiety,
exhaustion,
disease,
being annoyed by yourself.
And here we are talking about, we start this conversation with celebration. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know how anybody else celebrates, but like, if I take time to celebrate, I'm all in. Like, pretty much anything I do, I am all in. I'm a full active
Ram Jam.
Yes, Ram Jam. Full active participant of every commercial I watch. Like, that's just how I live my life. And I, after a celebratory time, the first thing that enters my head is I got to clean it out, right? I got to clean out my body or whatever. It's my detox period. I got to strip out all the stuff that I just flooded my body with and get myself back on track. right? And so it is this time of God wants us to celebrate all of the work that we've done. But he also wants us taking inventory of the stuff that needs to go, right? In order to just hold on to the good stuff, all the joy that you've just experienced, the satisfaction, the, like all of those things of being able to celebrate your successes for this moment, this gratitude. But it's also a really important time to then set up your plan for shedding, right? And that is the fasting. The fasting is a detox from any of those false pieces of self that are going to get in the way of this vision that you've created for yourself. You've just worked so hard to get to this celebration, to get to this graduation. What's going to be in your way to actually meet your goal?
Right.
Honestly, it's only you. It's only pieces of yourself that are going to sabotage that vision that you've got out in front of you. And that piece of self that wants to turn away from the vines, that wants to turn away from the mess, that wants to turn away from the work, the stripping.
Yeah.
That's the piece that's going to stand in the way of you and your wholly aligned self that you truly want. And the idea of the work that goes into that, I think scares a lot of people. It's like, because you're about to get dirty, and, and bloody and sweaty and tired. And, you're going to be, and maybe itchy and rashy and, like all the things. Yeah. But, the idea of being able to know that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And really, there's hard work in front of you, but a lot of the hard work has already been done.
Yep.
And if you really take the time to be still and celebrate in the way that God hopes that we will, and take inventory of all these things, then plotting that slow and steady and rock solid path is going to be much less intimidating.
Yeah. And I have written in my journal somewhere, it says at the top of one page, Jenny reminded me that the devil wants me to think that I haven't gotten very far. And then you spoke over me and you said, you have done these things. You moved to California. You did do all these things. You hosted a retreat. You did get the coaching certification. You did all these things. And I was at a place where I was like, meh, whatever. But when you spoke it over me, I was able to really take the inventory of how far I've come. And I think that's a great journal prompt too. Like, think about how far you have come. And while you're taking the inventory, this isn't just inventory of the weeds. This is inventory of these beautiful roses and these beautiful plants and the trees that are growing in your garden. Look at your garden and see what you have planted, how far you've come. And like we said, and celebrate those things. That's the thing that I told you, like that coach was like, Amy, do you stop and celebrate? And I really didn't, Jenny. I really didn't know how to celebrate myself. I was never taught. I'm in this culture with all of you that says, be humble, don't celebrate yourself. Well, I say, screw that. And I say, celebrate yourself, do what you need to do, take inventory of everything that you've done, that you've accomplished and you've done well. And think about the goals that you've set in your past that you have literally just, the thing, especially like the things, like the big things, like I needed to leave an abusive relationship and it took me a long time, but I did it. Like, I'm allowed to celebrate that. I'm allowed to stop right now and celebrate that if I want. But in that leaving and in that inventory, I had to take inventory too. So that was one of those seasons that we're talking about, that we're having again right now. I celebrated leaving. I celebrated the peace. I celebrated, but now I have to go back and figure out how I got there in the first place. So this is the inventory of what is standing between you and God, so that then you can take that and realize, what do I need to fast? Pray about where do I need to fast in my life? What is it that I need to give to God? Because that's what you're doing. You're putting it on the altar and you're giving it to God. You're submitting and surrendering whatever this thing is to him. So you're making space But remember, like Jenny said, like we need to fill it. So we want to fill it with God and spend time with him. And whatever that means, Jenny and I, every episode we talk about, like, looks different for everybody. For me, I'm a journaler. I am a put the pen to paper, don't think about it, no thought journal. And that God comes to me. God comes to me in the shower. Sometimes I have sometimes where I'm like, I just need to go get in the shower because I feel lost and me and God need to have a conversation. And I know a lot of people like that, like take a walk, meditate if that's your jam, whatever your thing is. Just remember, like, spend your time with God. And once you get this journaling done and look at your list and take that inventory, that's when you go into prayer and ask, what do we need to fast for or fast this season?
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the fact that we're talking about, like, we're really creating space to grow out even more, right? It's like, what I said before is like, don't rest too long on the laurels of these successes, because there's new opportunities coming in, which means there's opportunity for more growth, which means more opportunity to celebrate and more opportunities to align, and all, feeding this vision and this momentum that you've created. And so it's not this idea of the ego doesn't want to hear that it has to give anything away. Right. Exactly. This is why hoarding exists, right? Because we are afraid to get rid of anything. This is why disease exists in the body, because we can't even get rid of the emotional experiences that we've had. And we want to store everybody else's too along the way. Right. So it's, this needing to overwhelm ourselves for what? Maybe because we need it later, or maybe I'll have 5 minutes, I'll deal with that later. I can't do that right now, for whatever that is. This is just it's like all you're doing is just pivoting into a different way of looking at it, where it's not about you sacrificing something or giving something up, when in fact all you're doing is just creating space to then double the size of your garden. Like this year you want to add veggies and watermelons and all of these things. Well, you're gonna have to figure out what's got to go in order to make space to expand your garden, right? So the idea of fasting, of detoxing, of giving things up, of weeding your garden, stripping away whatever words feels good to your body, you're creating new space for the expansion that is to come. And this is how Amy and I pray over all of our joint clients that we have, and where what we're doing is we're correcting a misalignment, but that means we're moving energy, right? So if you're moving energy, you're creating a void. Now the void is where light begins, right? The void is where life sprang from. But if you don't decide what you're going to fill that void with, i.e. light, then it just becomes a black hole.
Exactly.
Right? And it's just going to suck in debris. And opportunists like vines and poison ivy and, even things that look cute and cuddly like rabbits and deer are going to come and eat flowers, and going to take your light and feed off of you. Right. And so one of the things that we're always praying over our clients is that space be filled with the potential, the light and love, so it can be held open for the potential of that future growth and the potential of that future expansion. And then it be held open for as long as it takes, right? Because we all have our own journeys to walk.
Right.
But we have to have the intention to hold that space open, to have a sturdy and secure foundation to build on. And so this is an interesting season that we're in right now, because we're all being pushed in the same direction. Now there's waves of us that are experiencing different parts of this bigger spiritual season, but we're all basically headed towards the same goal. But where are you in this season? Because you're in it. And just figuring out maybe you're still over there having a beer and hanging out at the graduation party. That's great.
Exactly.
Enjoy every second of it. Have good
Right.
conversations, dance to the band,
Eat
go
the food.
do all the things.
Right.
Know that there is a space coming to start the next phase of new celebrations to come. And that, this isn't, there's no need to get overwhelmed, that it's just setting an intention on what you want to create more of in your life and how you're going to make room for that to happen. And based on where you just came from in your education with God and the things that were very, very clearly pointed out to, this is amazing and this needs to stay, or this is not so great and this is creating massive resistance in my life and repetitive sabotage and negative cycles, and I don't want to do it anymore. We have that wisdom now. And so making sure that you're taking time to sit down and sort that out. And maybe it's not something you can do by yourself. Like I've been sharing a lot of material with Amy recently on the emotion code and the body code. And, Dr. Nelson talks about the conscious and the subconscious mind. And he uses the image of the glacier, the iceberg, right? And that there's only about 10% of that sticks out of the water. And that 90% of it is under the water, that's what sank the Titanic, right?
Yep.
And the ability to, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. It's not bad stuff, right? Like
Right.
there's also the field of universal consciousness is down in there, and like all the wisdom that you could ever want. All you have to do is just ask for it. But
Mhm.
the idea of being able to submerge ourselves and really dive deep, that we can really only do about 80% of that on our own. And that's if we're highly committed to the process and we have tools to help ourselves go deep, right?
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain depth, if you don't have someone to help you, right? If you think about a diver, there's only so far that they can go down without a team that's up on the surface monitoring their oxygen, making sure that their vitals are okay, that their pressure systems are in place, that they have enough light down there as they're exploring. Like stuff starts to get heavy and
Yeah.
and pressurized. And so the more you dig, there's that last like 10% that you need help. You need someone else to help you get in there because we're blind to ourselves in those places.
That's
And
right.
that's all of humanity. That's not, you're not special because you can see more of yourself than another person. We all have the same capability to be able to become emotionally intelligent and self-reflective because that's how God designed us.
Right.
But the work that needs to get done sometimes requires a team to help you get that far.
Right. Yeah. And I think pretty much all of our passion that's devoted into this identity program that we have, the identity recovery program, is really focused on everything we talk about. So Jenny and I do have a program, as she said, we do dual coaching, but we also have a program that you can go through that's going to help you with that wholly healed part of you. And we can coach you through all of these things to help you get that onion, that layer, that onion, so we can get down to what really needs to happen, so we can get you back to living authentically in that identity, the true identity, the authentic you that God created you to be when he put you in your mother's womb, before you came here and everyone messed us up. Everyone messed us up, our parents, our coaches, our environment, the generational curses. That's what Jenny and I love to do. We love to help assist you and be a part of your team if you so allow us, to help you really do the work that you can't do with yourself. And I think it's just really powerful to have someone get to that depth of that, like you said, the iceberg, to the places you can't see, and just help guide you through. Because man, this thing there's a lot of pressure when you get to that level. There's a lot of pressure and you do need help.
So, there are a few stages to this process that, we're kind of aligning with and discovering, and this is all through our own testimonies. And, the fact that we've gone through this and we know what the crisis looks like. We know what the
Right.
crisis feels like. And the crisis is the first step, right? It's like that time when you actually are discovering, I don't know who I am anymore. My life
Right.
is a mess. I don't even know what I like to do. I don't know what's fun anymore. I don't know what makes me happy. I don't
Right.
want to serve these people anymore.
Right.
I don't want to be a caretaker anymore. I don't want to be sick anymore. I don't want to be tired anymore. And this place of identifying that piece of it then puts you into the recovery, right? So it's the figuring out, so the steps, the identity crisis, the identity theft, which happens before the crisis, but you dig
Right.
into the theft during
Right.
the recovery discovery process, right?
Right.
So, we're not necessarily with you during the identity theft,
Nope.
but that identity crisis then leads you to us. But we do have identity crisis intervention. So if you're in a crisis and you need something, then, we have one-on-one programs. We don't do that in a group. That's like very personal and customized time, just for you. And where you get to be coached by both of us at the same time. And we combine both of our gifts and our modalities to help you through whatever that crisis is. And that can look a little different for everyone. That can be people that are trying to get out of abusive relationships. It can be people that are attempting to try to move careers or move locations, or, it can look very different for every person. But the overall process of diving into something that happens to every single person, and normally we're targeting women because of the fact that motherhood often drives women into this place, and it's the end, the fledging, right? The fledging of our kids, that usually starts this in motion. And change of life that starts this into motion, and this very normal place to find ourselves where we don't know ourselves anymore. We don't know our spouse anymore if we have one. So it is a place that you can go to dig deeper into these things. So as far as timelines, if you haven't already joined our Facebook group, the Soul Butter Facebook group, please go and join the community. We're going to be starting free coaching in just a few weeks. And on June 7th, the first Wednesday of every month, we're going to be offering free coaching and FAQ time to anyone that's part of that group. That group is also going to get first dibs on beta programs that are coming through, discounts that are coming through. We are going to be starting our 12-week program of the Holy Healed through that Facebook group. So please go join. So you're there for the launch of all of these things. You can reach out to us right now. We're actively doing the identity crisis management coaching already. That's something that you can reach out to us about now. We start with 6 weeks and kind of build out from there. But we also have booked the first joint retreat that we're going to be doing in November of this year, down south. So you're going to be seeing information launched in the next 2 weeks about all of this, so you can sign up. And that retreat is basically going to be a taste of the Holy Healed program, but in one intensive weekend. And you get the camaraderie of, sisterhood there, and we're going to do some fitness, and we're going to do some emotional fitness, and we're going to do some spiritual fitness, and it's going to be a great time. So now that we've, dumped all of the administrative stuff on you, let's just wrap up now with the invitation for this time period and the ointment.
Okay. Well, you usually do the invitation.
Well, the invitation is to really sit and take inventory, right?
Yeah.
And this is in the same time of celebration, because they happen, one causes the other to come forward pretty organically. As we sit and we reflect on our successes and we celebrate this moment of graduation and moving forward into this new identity that we have these dreams and visions for, we also must take inventory of those things that can no longer stand because they're only standing in our way of becoming that person that we were meant to be. And so this is a time to think about all of these things from whatever perspective is coming up for you. But ultimately, what you are talking about here is the false identity, the pieces of self that are no longer serving you, that want to be stripped away, that you're going to be fasting from those pieces of self, moving those things out of the way so you can expand your garden and invite in new opportunities for growth. So this really is a time of celebration and taking inventory.
And, you just kind of gave the ointment, because the ointment would be the fasting. The ointment is making space. And the beautiful thing about fasting is what Jenny said earlier, is fasting isn't just giving things up. It's making space for the good things to flow in. And when you are fasting, whatever that is, and you leave space for God, as we talk, like the pummeling, I call it the pummeling, when you do have to go through these hard times with God, let me tell you, we didn't talk about this much, but like, when you are in these really dying to self, because that's what it is, you're dying to yourself, you're dying to your old identity. There is a burning, there's a refining, and it hurts. And we talked about that a lot. But there is such beautiful moments in the midst of that process where God shows up in ways like you've never felt him before. And you can feel so loved. You start to feel these new feelings when you let him fill that space. The lack that you give him will be filled with him, and you will have these moments that will carry you to the next moment, to the next season. You get these moments, and it might last a day or two or a week in the hard times. And I think everybody can kind of identify, like, in these moments, it may be a phone call from a friend as the extra ointment you get in the fast. So you're fasting, but yet the new things that you leave on is actually the balm and the butter and the ointment that comes on you when you leave the space that is the fast. That opening of that light comes into yourself. It is pressure, it is hard, but there's such beauty in it because you get to experience something you've never experienced before. And the feeling for me was being a lot of us suffer with abandonment, whatever that means. But, sometimes we feel like God isn't there. We've been through a lot of stuff and God isn't there. But to feel the presence of God in that space where you're fasting, he comes in, he floods in, and there's this like feeling, like I used to feel like I was being held in his wings, like just held in his arms. And there is a feeling there that unless you make space for it, you're going to chase it. And you're going to keep chasing it. So we have to, like Jenny said, invitation to take inventory, write these things down. We'll put them down in the journal prompts to help guide you. And then you are going to meditate on that list and figure out what to fast. And then join us in the Facebook group, because on the 7th, we're going to be going over the journal prompts and offering you free coaching for any questions you might have, or just to share with others and share in a group of people that are on the same journey as you, because Lord knows that community is where it's at. Like, we need each other. So don't feel isolated. Jenny and I are offering our services to you. Like, come and take it, because otherwise there is a charge for group coaching or individual coaching. But this is a space that we're offering to you because we care. And we want you to feel the joy of having a community that are going to help each other get through all these seasons together.
Mm-hmm. A neurodiverse community grows the best garden. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We're wishing you a very happy celebratory graduation season. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to your loved ones. Thanks for taking the time and spending it here with us. Please drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe, to follow our channel so you're getting the alerts as they're coming through. And we hope to see you all real soon.
Bye.